All right, today we're talking about fate. And so what are we talking about in terms of fate? We are trying to build an RPG, and we are ripping off other ideas from other games, aka being influenced by them. We're just looking at a bunch of RPGs and board games and saying, what is it they did that was really cool? What did we love? What did I love? I'm talking the royal we, I guess. And what can I do? What can we do with them? You know, how can we use those influences to help build out our systems? So today we're talking about Fate. And Fate does a lot of cool stuff. You know, Fate I've played a couple times. It's one of those games that I love reading Fate and imagining Fate. And I can also tell you that when it comes to talking about my campaigns that I've been in after the fact, Fate had some of the coolest post stories. You know, talking about what happened in the story of some of the Fate campaigns was amazing. However, I would love to play Fate with someone who's an experienced DM and experienced players, because my group never took to the system a ton. You know, it was very hard to get out of our D20-esque sort of systems and really get into Fate. We liked it. We liked the idea of it. It just never flowed as well as it's supposed to. It's supposed to have a rhythm to it, and we never reached that. But that being said, we loved the stories that we created ad hoc. It wasn't as fun during it. It felt like a little bit like work when we were playing it, but afterwards we had some really rich stories. So what is some of the stuff that Fate does? Well, Fate was the first time we saw the Fate points, or that idea of, in 5e, which is kind of inspiration. Fate really had these Fate points where you could take these points and you could influence the story. So not only could you use a Fate point to re-roll, or you could use a Fate point to get bonuses on a roll, but you could use the Fate to actually change stuff in the story. And that was really cool. And there was this back and forth of, you're depleting Fate points, and while you're depleting Fate points, the DM might be gaining them, and then they can give them back to you in something that's called a compel. And so it was really interesting, right? So I loved that, and we'll actually talk about that. It was the idea of, well, we'll get back into that. So Fate points, really cool. Being able to, the player having a little bit more power and being able to influence their fate, you know, their roles and the story around them. The next thing I love about this system was the phase trio, or character creation. We do this in every system, every game that we play now, we do this. The idea here is that when you are creating your character, say you've got 3 players, what they do is you want to create that rich backstory and that bond between the characters. And I think that, you know, D&D 5e now has this slightly with their ideas, flaws, and bonds that they kind of have. But in this, what you did was you started to write a story. So you would write a half paragraph, like the intro to a story of some sort that happened in your past. Right? Maybe it's something like so-and-so, you know, John and I first met in this bar, and, you know, we were playing cards, and then next thing you know, one of us was caught gambling, and then you stop the paragraph, right? Then you pass it to the other player, and they finish the story, right? And these stories could be outlandish. They could be as big as you want, as small as you want, whatever. But what happens is, by you starting a story and then handing it to the person to your right, them finishing it, you finishing someone else's story, now you have these sort of, and then you do it twice. You then pass it to the other direction, where you now create a new story, and you go halfway, and the player to your left now finishes it. It just creates these cool connections with players. You're instantly creating these bonds, and you're instantly already getting into the idea of creating shared storytelling, which is what RPGs really is kind of about. In the Fate system, you then look at those stories that you've finished, and you try and figure out, what does that mean about your character, and you would create these things called aspects. But we just used it for the hell of it. In terms of, we wanted to create quick bonds between our characters, we would do the phase trio, or this character creation. So I love that. This game also had high concepts and troubles. A couple other games do. I think this is the ideals and flaws from 5e now. That's what 5e has kind of taken, that idea. And so it's really nice in this system, because the big thing in this system is they had aspect invocations. So in essence, you would have all these different aspects. Whoops. Boop. You would have all these different aspects about your character, whether it was your high concept, your trouble, or things that came out of your stories that you created with your other players. And each one of these aspects was something that you could invoke, meaning that you'd have to, if you wanted to use a fate point, you'd have to attach it to one of your aspects, so that would describe why you were able to do this. Okay, so if one of your aspects is I am the wizard detective, then if something happened, then I could use an aspect or a fate point because it makes sense thematically while I'm able to accomplish this task, or why all of a sudden, if I'm going to change the story, why in my pocket I have a specific device or information that I needed, etc. Because I'm using a fate point and I'm tying it to a thematic portion of my character. The final thing they have was these minor and major consequences. And so in this game, I'm kind of getting sick of hit points at this point in time. I don't like managing hit points as much. I like games that do something a little bit more unique now. Fate Core had stress, and so maybe you've got 3 total stress. 4, I don't remember what it is, but say you've got like 4 stress. Well, if you're going to take damage, you can either take the stress, or you can take minor and major consequences. So we'll say that a minor consequence absorbs 1 stress and a major consequence absorbs 2 stress. So say something hits you and they hit you for 2 stress. Well, I've only got 4 stress. So I could either take 1 stress and a minor consequence, or I could take a major consequence, or I could take 2 stress and I'd just be risking it. Because a minor consequence might be something like you sprain your ankle. Major consequence might be you fracture your ankle. Now these are both physical. You could have mental ones as well, like shaken or fear or scared or whatever. And those become negative aspects that things can invoke against you and sort of compel against you. So it could be a detriment, but it adds more flavor, it adds more fun to the system. So I loved the minor and major consequences, where once again, it's a press your luck or a risk reward scenario where, I don't want to take the damage because I want to make sure that I can't get knocked out later, but now I've got this twisted ankle. So what is that doing to me thematically? So cool concept of a variation on just doing hit points. All right. So that's it for Fate Core. The next video, what we're going to talk about is a game called Open Legend, another Kickstarter that has a ton of stuff. They've got their SRD online. It's a really cool system, and we'll get into it next time.